Hello fellow sim racers, and welcome to the final part of my video guide to the cars featured in Assetto Corsa Competizione. In the first three instalments, I took a look at the British, Italian and German cars in ACC, and if you'd like to watch them, then a link should be in the top right hand corner of your screens, as well as in the video description. Today's video takes a look at the Japanese cars from Honda, Lexus and a pair of Nissans. If you've watched any of the first three videos, then you'll know that all of the cars have been compared using the aggressive setup preset, because, well, the cars feel and drive better that way. The safe presets are great for beginners, but they induce a lot of understeer and generally they make the cars feel a bit lifeless. So at least you know vaguely where these comments are coming from. Assetto Corsa Competizione is blessed with two versions of the GT-R, representing the machines campaigned by RJN Motorsport in the Blancpain GT series in 2018. The number 22 car being a 2015 spec chassis, while the number 23 was the then brand new 2018 model. The differences between the models are subtle and they reflect the usual development path of GT3 cars, of weight reduction, rebalancing, aero efficiency gains and improvements to chassis dynamics. Starting off with the 2015 car, and I'm going to come right out and say it, this is my least favourite car in Assetto Corsa Competizione. There had to be one I suppose, and Godzilla the Elder takes the crown. That being said, there's nothing especially bad about the car, but to me it feels a bit flat, a bit muted, particularly when driven side by side with the new model. And from my perspective, it feels like the least responsive of all of the front engine cars. But it does have an ace up its sleeve. It's a bit of a monster in a straight line. In fact, on the aggressive setup, it peaks around 5 km an hour faster than the new model, which isn't to be sniffed at somewhere like Paul Ricard or Monza. So, choose your poison, straight line speed or cornering prowess. As is customary by now, let's take a listen to the extremely accurate onboard sound of the old GT-R. And outside, the raspy exhaust note from that twin-turbo V6 is, well, judge for yourself. The 2018 Nissan GT-R boasts an engine that's mounted both lower and further back than the previous model, achieving a much more desirable weight distribution and centre of gravity. This is a pretty common trick in the evolution of GT3 cars, and, well, it seems to work pretty well. In ACC, this translates to a car that's shed that front-end push that plagued the old model, while retaining the good behaviour later on in the corner, ultimately making this a much more responsive car to drive. Now, for that reason, I can see this being infinitely more popular than the 2015 car, and honestly, it is a lot more fun to drive, well, for me at least. And I think this probably makes for another good candidate for those just starting out in sim racing and ACC. The handling is that nice mixture of responsive but predictable, and importantly, the front end doesn't need nearly as much management as some of the other front engine cars, which can be pretty tricky when you're still learning the ropes. To keep the audio thing going, and unsurprisingly, the onboard audio sounds pretty similar to the old car. And it's a pretty similar story outside as well. The Lexus is, for want of a more enticing word, an interesting car. The ML team have been campaigning it variously in VLN and GT Open for a few years before finally bringing it to Blancpain in 2018, viewing it as the successor to the much-loved Jag. They pulled off a dramatic last lap victory at Paul Ricard and finished third in the Endurance Cup Championship. Not a bad first year. But then they severed their ties with Lexus and dropped out of Blancpain, so what do I know? Stepping away from the real-world context and into ACC, there's really only one way to describe the Lexus RCF: rapid. If you watched any of the action from the SRO Esport GT series round at Paul Ricard, you'll know this was a popular car. So much so that, in a wonderful display of brand loyalty, real-world AMG driver and Blancpain champion Raffaele Marciello opted for the Lexus when he participated in the AM race, and it's pretty easy to see why. The Lexus feels strong everywhere. Good turn-in, stable mid-corner behaviour, and as far as I can see, it puts down the power very well. On top of that, it stops quickly and eats cabs for breakfast, so what's not to like? When I first drove all of the new cars, this one felt one of the most immediate to me. It communicates what it needs from the driver and then just delivers the results. Ultimately, it was David Tunizza in the Lambo that took the spoils at Paul Ricard, but the margins were small, and the Lexus looked hyper-competitive all weekend. So you're going to be seeing a lot of this car, and thankfully it's a bit of an earworm. And the external sounds are just as nice, which is great news for those of you that are going to be stuck behind one for a 60-minute stint. Finally, onto the Honda NSX, the last car I'm going to cover in this video, and indeed the last in the series. But more than that, the original NSX was a dream car of mine as a kid. It was fast, beautiful, and Ayrton Senna helped with the development. Of course I loved it. And while the new road-going version hasn't stirred the same devotion, it's fair to say that I was pretty hyped about driving this in Assetto Corsa Competizione. And it's exactly those kind of preconceptions that usually ruin everything. I really hated the NSX to start with. I thought it felt too safe, too lazy, and completely lacking in passion. But as I've got to know the car a little more over the last 10 days, it started to grow on me. Turn-in still feels a little lazy, but the mid-corner speed is really impressive, and as long as you're careful with your right foot on exit, you can really carry that speed. Honestly, this is one of the quicker cars in my highly amateur hands, but strangely, it just doesn't feel it. So, in summary, I'm pretty sure everything I think about the NSX is polluted with nearly 30 years of baggage left by the old car, so I make no claims about any sort of objectivity here. Not that I've tried to do so about any of the other cars, I might add. This is something we all run into as sim racers to some degree or another. Our expectations of what a car should feel like often cloud our judgment and lead us to some pretty ridiculous conclusions. So, what I'm saying is drive the NSX and judge for yourself. And with that complete cop-out of an opinion, it's time to wrap things up here. I hope you enjoyed the video and the series as a whole. If you did, it would be great if you could hit the like button and subscribe so you can see more content like this in the future. I'm off to Le Mans this week, so the video schedule for the next few days is mostly imaginary at this stage. And with that in mind, all that's left to say is goodbye, thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of your day.